In this conversation, I'm going to be speaking with Dipti Verma, the Vice President of People Experience, what the rest of us call HR, at Amazon India, Japan, and emerging markets. In a collaborative conversation that we're going to have, we're going to talk about things like culture, work, balance, looking after people, the future of work with AI, and how big companies like Amazon can actually have their culture trickle down to every last employee. Thank you so much for making time to have this conversation with me. I love that you call it people experience and not HR. What's the difference?
Well, firstly, I'm really excited to be here talking to you today. So, thank you so much for having me over. And to begin with, yes, many years back, actually, Amazon leadership team decided that our role is not just about resourcing human beings. Our role is about creating the right experiences from the time a person actually joins Amazon to the time the person actually leaves Amazon. um, how do you create that frustration free experience for that person
Mm.
and use technology to simplify that experience for them? Let me ask you a question. Has anybody actually taught you how to shop at Amazon?
No.
Yeah. So if people haven't taught you how to shop at Amazon, similarly, I think the experience has to be such that all the tools that employees use should be such that it should be simple, intuitive, and scalable. And no one needs to actually spoon feed a person to say, okay, use this, use that. The second one, which is very important for us, is that a person who has a good experience actually brings their authentic self to work. They're able to improve the productivity. They're happy and they enjoy the work that they're doing. So, what can we as HR do to create an environment that will make people bring their authentic self? So that's why we don't call ourselves as HR. We call ourselves as people experience and technology.
I feel like, and a lot of people tell me this as well, that we start off well meaning as companies saying that, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and these are our policies, and put it up on a big plaque in the office. And then when the deadlines are approaching, or when you're working on a product that has to be released, then everybody is like, working all night and really pushing those boundaries, and the work life balance goes out of the window. How do you make sure that these philosophies that you stand by actually stand through for everyone all the time? And if there's a deadline, people are still, still getting the balance that they need.
Yeah. No, very, very nice question. And I'll tell you a little bit of example about myself when I joined Amazon many years back, I think 14 years back. And I still remember I'd come from another organization. And for the first few months, I was given so much of feedback about this is not the Amazon way of doing things. And every person that you would interact with, they would actually help you to understand the Amazon culture. From how do you make decisions, and not wait for someone to tell you, to thinking big, to working backwards from customer needs, to, trying to have a backbone, disagree, and commit. So, unlike in organization where you'll see some of these leadership principles are put on the wall, this was a place where I saw that everybody used to walk the talk and they used to give you feedback to become an Amazonian. And initially, I used to find it very irritating. Used to feel, is something wrong with me as to why people are giving me so much of feedback? And now I realize this is their way of helping us to, kind of embrace the culture and embrace those 16 leadership principles that we have. And today, when I look back, I feel that most of the way in which we are operating, irrespective of which geography, which country you operate in, that culture is the same. And of course, there are deadlines, as you rightly pointed out. Of course, there are things that are there, but that leadership principle also talks that think big, do not look at short-term measures for a long-term thing. And people will call it out that you're doing a
Yeah.
shoddy job or you're taking
That
a
you don't
short,
really mean it. Yeah.
don't mean it, kind of a thing.
What is have a backbone? What does that mean?
Oh, well, it's very interesting. What used to happen is people were worried, our esteemed leaders were worried that it should not be like that someone is saying something, making a point, and there is a social cohesion. So, how do you help an Amazonian to speak up, irrespective of which level the person is? Whether it is a person who's an associate who's just joined, or a person who's a vice president, or a person who's not relevant to that topic is sitting in that group, how do you bring that person to bring their authentic self. So they created a leadership principle of earning trust. And they said you'll only be able to earn trust if you show a backbone and talk about a very diverse perspective as compared to what is there, and not get worried about which level you come from or where do you come from. But there is also flip side to that.
Hmm.
If there is a diverse view that you've come up with, and the decision has been taken, which is something different, which has been taken, then you should also commit to that decision.
Hmm.
So the leadership principle basically talks about have a backbone, disagree, and commit. So it's as important. You can't keep saying, oh, it was not my decision, it was someone else's decision. So how do you bring about that leadership principle, and what do you understand by those leadership principles?
See, right now, the conversation that everybody is having is about work life balance. And I find it interesting that the younger team members in any of our offices, right, the ones who are in their early 20s, have a completely different expectation of what work life balance should be than those of us who started off earlier and, initial years of our career, we just were working all the time. Are you able to motivate the Gen Z employees? How many are you working with right now? And do these philosophies also fit for Gen Z?
Yeah. I would say why only Gen Z? I think there is a shift that I'm seeing across all levels
Okay.
with respect to work-life harmony as well as, physical and mental fitness. And the fact remains is that irrespective of which, role that you're doing, irrespective of which, era you belong to, you would want to have a schedule that gives you flexibility as well as gives you a space where you can actually operate in the way that you would like to. So across Amazon, we do not like tell you this time you have to come or that time you have to go. You have flexibility to do the work that you do at a time at which you have
Wait,
to.
no, so Amazon employees can come and go as they please.
Yes,
Do you have to swipe cards at the door?
yeah, you have to swipe the card at the door about that, yes, you are in the office. But if I'm coming at 9 o'clock or I'm coming at 10 o'clock, depending upon the meetings that I'm taking across the globe, no one is going to ask you about that. What we say is the work that you do matters. What we say is it's not about you have to spend so many hours in the office. That is not something that we push for. But
See, my rebuttal to that is it's possible then. I mean, we found that work from home is actually the least balance in many cases because you think you're at home, but it's difficult to compartmentalize because now people feel they can call you at any time. So it's possible to say, hey, listen, I don't really care how many hours you spend in the office as long as your work is done. But how do you ensure that this individual's workload stays within a certain balance?
yeah, so firstly, I want to talk about this whole thing that you're talking about working from home and working from office. We believe that we're able to innovate much better when employees actually come to office.
Yeah, I think that everybody sort of agrees to that.
And
now.
we have actually encouraged people to come back
to come.
office.
But is there a diktat that they have to do a certain number of days?
We say that come to office. We are not saying
Okay, so you're no longer work from home at all.
no, we don't have a work from home. There is flexibility which has been given to people if there is something that I want to work from home because I've just come back, or there is a child who's not well, or there is this thing. But we expect that, come to office, work with people around, innovate, and, make things easier. Now, once that's done, we leave it on to you as to how you're trying to manage your projects, your work, your load. We're not, trying to dictate that for you. And I think one of the leadership principles that we go back to, which says, how do you become Earth best employee, which is one of our 15 leadership principle, which basically says, how do you lead with empathy? How do you help employees? Like leaders should actually have fun and create an environment where people can have fun. So we actually have lot of policies and processes in Amazon which actually helps a person to balance.
Give me an example.
So very recently, we actually came up with an AI tool which helps you to understand your mental health and wellness. It asks you question. You can actually log on to it every day. It asks you question every day about how you're feeling. Are you feeling okay or not? And if after those set of questions, we feel that the AI actually feel the person is not doing okay, they are suggested that why don't you take EAP help? Why don't you do this? So it also talks about some of the other venues that we have through so that people can feel better and feel more relaxed. I think it's important because a lot of times you realize that people may not be even aware about the fact that they're going through some kind of anxiety and all. So that's one policy. We also have ramp back policies for employees who've come back from maternity leave or any life kind of situation. So part-time policies where people can work for half the hours that they are working because they need to handle something at the home. So there are many such flexibilities that we give to employees so that they can work at the pace at which they want, and they can feel that they are able to get their authentic self.
What, in your opinion, is your most successful retention tool in Amazon? Because I understand that you take great pride in the fact that people have long careers at Amazon. How do you retain them?
So there is something that we call ourselves having the day one culture. Have you heard about day one culture?
No.
Okay. Let me ask you, when the first day that you started your job and you were going to interview the first person, how were you feeling on that day one?
Nervous,
And
excited,
and
um, I don't know, maybe wanting to do a good job, have a good impression, wanting to win in some way.
absolutely. And that's what day one is for. Just like you're sitting at the edge of the chair on the first day that you come, you have butterflies in your stomach. You are excited, you are nervous, but you also have this feeling that my work can actually create a legacy and you can really do wonders, and people will recognize you for the kind of work that you're doing. And basically, Jeff basically says that that spirit that you feel on the first day of your work, that spirit should never go away as long as you stay at Amazon. And in fact, in one of his videos, he says, day two actually is decline, which will lead to death. If you are, not having that
Same feeling.
on the first day and you continue to, not have that excitement, it'll lead to static or decline, which will lead to death. So for us, we keep telling Amazonians that that day one spirit where you raise the bar on employee experience, you think big, you are creating new standards, that spirit should always stay.
Have you ever met Jeff Bezos?
Yes.
What is he? What is he like?
He's the first thing that actually you get impressed with his laughter. Like he has larger than life laughter, and the way he thinks, the way he is able to engage with people across. I think it's been very impressive. He had come when we had kind of launched a lot of things in India way back. Then we'd come again to meet all the sellers. So we've met him a couple of times. It's been, I think, super impressed with his thought process, his vision.
Give me an example.
Let me, it's like, tell me one thing that I'm not impressed about. It's so difficult to talk about. I think I'll give you a very simple example. When Amazon, many years back, Jeff had this idea of that we will invite other sellers to sell on Amazon. It was a very radically different idea. People felt, why would we call competition to sell at Amazon? But he was so sure about the thing. And today, look at it. We have millions of sellers selling at Amazon and we are servicing so many customers across. That small little thing, he had the conviction to see, quite ahead and say that, no, this is the right thing. So I think what I have really liked about him is he thinks so customer backwards, and that has become like the bread and butter for us. We have been taught from the very beginning that, customer is the king. Even for HR, employees are our customers. Work backward from employees' needs. So
What are your diversity numbers like right now in terms of gender, people with disability? What are your targets and where are you right now on those targets?
we don't talk about the numbers per se, but I can tell you this, that I'm very proud of the fact that the diversity of the customer is replicated in the employee base. And for us, diversity is not just about gender or people with disability or LGBTQ plus or people with different backgrounds. It is all veterans. For us, diversity is also diversity of thought, diversity of the background from which you come, diversity of, the skill sets that you bring. And, I was, telling my son about Amazon one day and trying to educate him about it. And I said, there are so many mini companies within Amazon. So whether it is operations or it is, Prime Video or it is music or it is machine learning or it is the Alexa or devices or AWS fulfillment center. So look at the diversity of talent that we have and look at the kind of people that we are trying to hire for all of those, the skill sets, the people who are, coming from backgrounds. Just for this interaction with you, we have people from different parts of the country, one from Kashmir, one from Northeast, one from, Delhi, one from Bombay, all of us coming together to interact with you. So you can understand that we actually replicate the diversity of the talent externally into our employers.
So a lot of times what happens is, again, the company in a very well-meaning way decides, okay, we're going to make sure that our team is diverse. And once you bring someone in, so let's assume you bring in someone with disability, or you bring in someone from the who's queer in the LGBTQI community. Not only do you need to make physical infrastructural changes to your workplace to make it friendly for someone, say in a wheelchair, or someone with a with a vision disability, you also have to then sensitize the rest of the team
Yeah.
so that there's no bullying, poking of fun, exclusion. Because I remember a lot of the research that I did said people with disability join offices that are well-meaning, but then they get left out of social events. They don't get invited to stuff because people think that, oh, you're not going to be interested in something like this. And sometimes that is not direct bullying, but it tends to weigh on the person's mind. Is this something that you tackle? Do you have a policy to tackle it? Tell us how.
This is a very an example very close to my heart. But before I answer this, I want to ask you: do you think you're a person who's inclusive? Would you call yourself a person who's inclusive?
I try to be to the best of my ability.
Absolutely. And that's what I thought about myself too. I thought that I'm like an HR person, very inclusive, trying to do things where I'm being included of people from different backgrounds. So I had, organized this event for people with disability, and I'd send out a email with a poster saying that everybody should come for the event. And guess what? People who were blind could not actually see the poster because it was pasted. So that it was such a big learning. After that email, there was a person who wrote to me saying that, I know you did it for us, but I couldn't read the poster. And that was such a big learning for me that we are all well-intentioned people. We want to make our organization inclusive. But the problem is that the awareness is so less. And at the leadership level, if we do not, take that extra effort to build in that awareness, we will never be able to be inclusive. Another example is that there was this person who was going through a gender change. And, the Aadhaar card was in
Yes, in the first given name and not the assumed name.
no, the person was in process of going through that, and the Aadhaar card was still in the old gender. And there was this COVID, and no one was admitting that person into the hospital. And I went and I said that, please, we are, from the organization perspective, we are certifying this is the process which the person is. Imagine the kind of plight. So I think it is so important for leaders to make people around, be aware.
You do make a conscious effort to hire retired people from the services.
Yes, and I will tell you this, being, my father was in the armed forces, I feel very passionate about it. It's not just that we've restricted most of the armed forces people into facility or admin kind of, functions. We have people who've been, like one of our leaders is actually the global safety leader. We have people in technology, we have people in product management, we have people in HR, we have people in finance who are from armed forces who've joined us. And we recently actually signed a memo with the armed forces that we will actually have employment for war widows, and we will also try and see if the spouses of the armed forces can be trained to join Amazon or be a seller at Amazon, because they're posted across.
I mean, is this a conscious policy for you? And how do you let sort of ex-army men or ex-servicemen or slash women know that you are open to this sort
Yeah,
of employment?
we have a policy, and
Hmm.
we've also actually worked with the armed forces, the placement cell, to make sure that they're aware about it. But the problem is not about hiring. Problem is helping them to transition into the corporate. And I think that is something that we feel very happy that
What's the biggest challenge? I've never thought of that. What's the biggest challenge of transitioning someone from the services into a corporate life?
Yeah. So see, these people have been at the front running, who have actually fought wars, created legacy, and you are asking them to come and do like a 9 to 6 kind of or a corporate job where they have to go through some of these policies, processes. So that transition becomes very difficult. What we started doing was we did this program where we used to help them transition and help them to see the vision about how they are, servicing so many people across the globe, how they are creating livelihood, how we are trying to, help a very large customer base who's not able to actually, shop, to make life easy for them.
Obviously, for an average shopper, when I think of Amazon, the people who come to mind are the people who do the deliveries and the people who work in the warehouses. How do you look after those people?
I think for us, irrespective of which place you are, the three most important thing is safety, reliability, and speed. And we make sure that the safety of the worker, irrespective of where is the most important thing that we look for. We design our policies around the people, that they feel that they have the right kind of safety procedures that we follow. And we also make sure that their overall interest is kind of taken care. So we have a lot of policies where people can actually, there's a program called Career Choice Program. So a person who's going through these, the fulfillment center or the delivery center can actually side by side educate themselves, and they can actually apply for other roles within Amazon. So it's about, because some of them take up these roles aspiring to be something different. In fact, I remember a story from Chennai where there was this person who first joined us as a delivery associate. Then he part-time, worked through this career choice program, joined us in the ML team, and now he's an associate for the sellers. So there are so many such stories where we want to actually tell the person that you're not joining one job at Amazon, you're building a career at Amazon, and we will facilitate that for you.
Is Amazon now adopting more automation across the board? What are the roles in which AI is sort of, making space within the organization?
I think automation has been going on for many years.
Yeah.
Let me put it this way. Even before AI came in, most of the processes were starting to get automated. There was always, and for having a company of our size, we can't, survive if we are not really automating the thing. But instead of just automating one part of the pie, we are thinking about how the end-to-end process can be frustration-free using AI. And then, what part of it where we would need human intervention kind of a thing. So I think the future would be like when internet came and everybody said, oh, what will happen to the roles, what will happen to the jobs and all. But there were new industries that got formed, and there was so much, life became much more simpler than what it was. Information flow became simpler. And I feel with AI coming in, the cognitive load for everybody has come down so much that they're able to concentrate on many more meaningful things that needs to be done. I think I love the way, we have internal tools in AI where people are allowed to experiment and say, how can you make your job more simpler and scalable through AI? And it's just showing such great results that I feel we are really embracing it very well. And I'm very, while it is challenging, but it is so exciting what future.
So from a human resources point of view, is there a future in which AI will track productivity, efficiency, actually reviews of each individual? Is that something that you expect? Or in the human resources space, how will AI be integrated?
So firstly, I wish I could predict the future. And I'm sure there will be many more people who are doing research to predict it, but I don't think so anyone can predict about it fully. Having said that, I think we do need to be comfortable about the fact that future would have both AI agents as well as
Yeah.
human beings that you would be dealing with.
Hmm.
And you need to be prepared for that kind of a world, because AI is going to embrace us and it is going to make life simpler. So I don't have an answer to tell you as to whether it would be doing this or not, but I can tell you this, that even before, all these AI tools came in, Amazon was quite a pioneer in trying to use some of these things to our advantage to build the right culture. And I'll give you an example.
Mm.
We have something called as a connection. Connection is nothing but as soon as you come and log into your computer, there is a, a kind of a question that pops up on your desk to say,
Okay.
how are you feeling today?
Yeah.
Do you feel engaged with your manager? Do you think your career is growing? Do you think the facility is okay? Kind of a thing.
Mm.
And all that data for all the employees across the world gets triggered and gives you an analysis to that manager to say, focus on these things to make sure that the environment is such that the person can actually be productive and bring it. So I felt that we started using machine learning algorithms. We started using some of these things to simplify things much earlier, and we started, helping the workforce to, kind of scale.
If you were to sort of imagine and predict how you would use it in the future, in a future of your imagining, what would that be?
I would say how I'm using right now. I can tell you that. Sister, I don't think so. I would be able to predict, but yeah, we've been using it quite extensively when it comes to trying. We have a white paper culture where we don't believe in PowerPoints. We always write research white papers whenever we are trying to write a white paper. And across the countries that I operate, there were times where, some of the countries had local language where they were not able to, speak that effectively in English. So they used to use AI to kind of translate in split of a second what they want to speak. There were analysis that were done, which is, kind of looked through, and, productivity is looked at that. And we've been also trying to see how we could be very inclusive of people from different backgrounds, because sometimes, you are not comfortable writing and you use this as a tool to, make the cognitive load be lesser. So there are many experiments that have been going on, but this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Do you expect, from your desk, that you will have to reskill a large portion of the workforce in order to be ready for that future?
We have already reskilled people. In fact, we did that this year, and we did it in such a way that it was not just about training people on AI. We did hackathons. We asked people to create apps. We, made people play around with AI, because, the best way to learn is to just play around in an environment where you can actually experiment, innovate. And we've had very great results. So it's not that, okay, this is your KRA that you have to finish this training. We've gone ahead and said, go ahead, experiment, innovate, and feel
See,
good.
I have to ask you about this because there were reports of layoffs of 14,000 corporate jobs globally. I understand it translates to about 1,000 in India. And at the same time, we're talking about large scale investment in automation and AI and stuff. So the comment section in my story would always be, hey, these guys have enough money for AI, but they don't have the money for the humans. Is that what is going on? Can you explain to us what this means?
Yeah, I will say that already Andy, our CEO, has already talked about it. In fact, Beth, our global CHRO, has also talked about it. I'm not going to add anything new, what is not there in media already. That, whenever there is an organization that is growing, it grows at a fast pace. And then, of course, there are these transitions that happen where you have to slow the pace of the growth.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you're not growing. You're growing, but you are trying to flatten the organization so that the decision making is faster. Because if you grow so fast, you become so big. Sometimes, there are so many layers that the decision making slows down. So our culture is such that we would want to be nimble. We would want to focus on what matters the most. As we speak, we are still hiring, but I would tell you that this exercise helped us to, make the decisions be faster, because we were trying to reduce the layers and trying to flatten the organization.
For any young person who's joining the workforce right now, maybe Amazon, maybe somewhere else, what is your advice to someone starting their career? Because this is a very different world.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult, like you said, to predict which way this world is going to go.
Yeah.
How should I, as a 23-year-old starting my career, be sort of prepare myself for a world of work and AI and changing and reskilling and workforces expanding and shrinking?
Actually, frankly speaking, every one of us needs that advice. And I feel I also need that advice.
Oh, well, what is the advice though?
So you're asking the wrong person as to what advice should I give to a 23-year-old. I would love you to give me advice if you've had a rocking career yourself. But I can tell you one thing, that if you are hungry to learn, one of our leadership principle is learn and be curious. If you are hungry to learn and you're curious to learn new skill sets, you will be able to adapt to any change that is coming. The only thing permanent in this world is a change. So
Yeah.
that is one of the key skills that I keep telling people. If the person is making a career in HR, then I would say be right a lot. Because, for us,
WRITE or which right?
yeah, like make right decisions.
Make right decisions.
Yeah,
Okay.
be right a lot,
Thought.
Why I say so is that as an HR person, if you're trying to make a career, a lot of decisions that you make are one-way door decisions. They're not two-way door decisions. So you impact a lot of people. So you should not just look at data. You should look at data and anecdote. And the power of being a good HR person would be right a lot.
That's actually very daunting, right? Because
Yeah.
I mean, only one would assume heart surgeons need to be that a lot. Because in most jobs, everybody makes mistakes. So how do you not make a mistake?
No, I'm not saying you should not make a mistake. In fact, I feel at Amazon, we recognize the people who make mistakes. We celebrate mistakes. And we say that the more mistakes you make, that means you would have taken risk and you would have, failed at that risk. You've learned something from that and you'll be able to improve. But when I'm saying be right a lot,
Yeah.
like don't just make decisions without thinking through, deep diving and making decisions. That's very essential kind of a thing.
So I feel that, for most careers now going forward, the one thing that we are all going to need, and I feel like we should teach our children this, is resilience.
Yeah.
Which is that you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
You're going to fail. You're going to have your heart broken. You're going to lose your job. Someone once told me this when I started my career, and he said, everybody gets fired at least once in their career. He says, it's just going to happen. It happens to everyone. And I was like, until it happened to me. And I was like, it's never going to happen to me. But I feel like, just mental resilience
Yeah.
to say, this could happen to anyone.
Yeah.
And things will, like you said, keep changing. And I'm going to
Yeah.
get back on my feet
In fact,
one way or the other.
in our interview, we always ask this question. Give us an example of a time when you failed. What did you learn from it?
Yeah.
And it's so important. Like I tell my team, I have been a person who's failed so many times at Amazon, and I'm here.
Yeah.
And I'm here because I have failed. And, there was someone who's, looking at my failure and telling me that you've learned something from them and moved on. In fact, you were talking about diversity. I still remember this big thing that I should tell you about. There is a program we have launched which is called Rekindle, where women who've taken a break, we actually help them to join back at Amazon. The first time I launched Rekindle, I had 2 people join through that program. It failed miserably. And one of them, after joining, left kind of a thing. And I was thinking, what went wrong? We are going, we are training, everything is going fine. Till I actually started talking to some of the women who were joining. They said, you are thinking that, just helping us to join back would help us to stay. We also have a family who's adjusting to the fact that
you're
we're actually joining. So in the first few months that we joined, you have to give us a little bit of soft landing platform that we are able to get our family to adjust to this new reality. And that was like an aha moment for me.
So can I ask you something? And I've encountered this myself, then again, when I was in management, when I talk to people all the time, that again, we have these great policies where we say that, okay, there's this much maternity leave and there's this kind of like flexi work when you come back from mat leave, because this is the point where we lose the best women
Yes.
in the workspace, right? That's that crisscross point. But then there is a mindset that goes with it.
Yeah.
And I remember standing next to the head of human resource of a very large organization, and it was about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the evening, and we were both waiting for a meeting to start. So we're just looking over the entire sort of floor, and we were chatting about something else. And then you could see as it built to 6 o'clock, the energy changed. And there was this one woman who's like, slapping her laptop shut. And she picked up her bag and she bolted out of the door. 5:45, she was gone. And he turned around and said, "These women are all, you just want to leave at 6 o'clock." I looked at her and said, first of all, 6 o'clock is completely fine.
Absolutely.
Right. Secondly, she has a whole job waiting for her at home
Absolutely.
that she's going to have to do. And I also let him have it, saying, your wife's looking after your house and your child and your meals, and you just walk home to a hot meal. You have to do none of these things.
Yeah.
But she has to do all of these things. But there is a mindset that you also then have to work with.
Yeah.
How have you tackled that mindset? Have you tackled it? How have you tackled it?
Absolutely. And I will tell you that, like any other organization, when we were trying to work on our maternity leave policy, we said we will not restrict our maternity leave to only, let's say, birth mother, adopted mother, parents who are same sex partners who are adopting. So we have paternal leave also. But one thing that we realized was all these policies are fine. How do you educate people to make the right
Yes.
decision at the moment? I still remember we have something like an on call, and there was this on call which happens at night, because throughout the night there is this IT engineers who are on call to make sure the support is there. And once this lady came and she says, I'm breastfeeding, I can't get on call. And it was an aha moment. And we says, from today, the guideline is anyone who comes back from maternity leave for 1 year, we will not put the person on call. So I think it is having the right common sense at that time to just make sure that you are protecting the experience of that person who's become a new parent, irrespective of whether it's a birth mother or an adopted mother or a same-sex parent. It is important.
No, but how do you tackle the, if there is any resentment that builds into other team members? Like the men who say, "Arey yaar, now she's not even going to come on calls. Now we have to cover for her on that also."
I think firstly we don't have this policy about 6 o'clock or this, as I told you, people can leave any time kind of a thing. And we've seen that people who have actually come back from maternity, there are people who've actually got promoted while they were on maternity leave. So we've always encouraged a culture where it is not about, what status you have or what time you're going or have you come back. We actually reward the people who are working irrespective of the time that you spend on the office, which creates the right culture. So no one actually looks at you because you packed your bag and going at 5:45 or 6. That culture is not there at all.
It's not there. Do you have paternity leave?
Yeah, we have paternity leave of 6 weeks.
6 weeks?
Yeah.
Because I feel like also one of the problems that we have when we go out of our way, as we should, to make sure that the women who are juggling home and work are looked after, is that we're also sending a message saying that this is purely the responsibility of women, because we have women who are caring for parents or in-laws. We have women whose children are in the 10th or the 12th standard who need extra attention. And then there are the ones who have small children. And in all these cases, yes, we have to go out of our way to sort of help them out, but there has to be some messaging that says that, hey guys,
Yeah, absolutely. We have paternity leave, and we actually make sure that parents take that. It is not just about telling a male person that you should get this time off. Help the employees. We also have a way in which you can port those leaves if there is someone else not getting kind of a thing. But I'll give you a small little example. I think it depends upon the culture, depends upon how the leader in that organization sets that culture. If you as a leader encourages people to take leave, yourself take leave, make it public that you are taking time off and you're not, checking
Yeah.
mails and all
I
that.
came back after 2 weeks. Like,
Then the culture gets created. I still remember, the first time I'd gone and visited the Japan team, they used to actually stop their notification when they used to go home. And it was such a nice way to have the right work-life harmony that I came back to India and I said, what a nice best practice that we should actually, if people want to shut down, they should shut down.
Hmm.
So there is so many, like the beauty about my role is that I get to learn so much from the different.
I was going to ask you. So when I read that you handle India and Japan, I was like, wow, because there's such different cultures in every way. What was the most striking thing that you sort of picked up when you went to Japan and you first started? Because handling people means understanding the culture.
Yeah, I must say I failed there also for the first time. There wasn't.
If you had succeeded on the first try, that would really be, that's a book waiting to be written. But tell me.
But it was like Japan taught me a lot of cultural humility.
Okay.
I'll talk to you about that because, see, the thing is, when you go from India, the first time you go, you say, "Oh, I know it all, and this is what we've done it in India, so let's do that." And it wouldn't work there. They would say yes, but the work wouldn't happen till I actually understood that this is their way of actually showing respect to you. That they wouldn't, kind of do things. They won't speak, but they wouldn't do things if they're not convinced about. So I actually had to sit, learn their philosophy of how they actually look at work. And once I was able to understand that, once I was able to understand how the country works, I was able to not only, improve my own interaction with the Japan team, the productivity of the team went up.
How do you have a backbone, philosophy in a country where people just say yes to be respectful and polite?
No, so have a backbone is not just orally saying that I don't agree. If you're not doing a particular thing, saying that this is the data and this is the data, and they just keep shut and just show you the data, it also helps you to understand that there was this diverse perspective that you did not think about. So I think that actually helped me to, start asking for the voices which were sometimes not speaking in a meeting room.
Right.
And I still remember I'd gone to Japan and there was this person who was sitting who doesn't speak much but had very diverse view. And I asked the person, come sit next to me. And just, pausing and saying, what's your view? It doesn't matter whether you're speaking in English or not, but it matters what is your view. And you will hear the right view. So I think it is also about facilitating people to bring their authentic self.
What is the overwhelming experience or emotion you would want all Amazon employees to have?
Have the day one spirit alive in yourself. Raise the bar every day. Work backwards from the customer, need, and continue to think big. Amazon will be a place where everybody would love to work.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.